Welcome to TFL Talkin Trucks. I am Andre, and I have a very special guest today.
I would say a very unspecial guest today, Andre. My name is Tommy, and today I am joining Andre. Usually I am on the Talking Cars podcast, but today I thought we'd have a fun conversation about the future of trucks.
Yes, and specifically, first of all, I want to touch on a lot of news that just happened in the truck world, specifically electric trucks. And we get these questions a lot, actually. Actually, about an hour ago, one of our viewers emailed us and they said, will electric trucks be viable? Will they actually work?
Ooh, what a question.
Yes.
That's a great question. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest and greatest in pickup truck and van news. Then we're going to dive right into, will electric pickup trucks be commercially successful? Are they going to be able to tow? Are they going to be able to fit your budget? And are they going to be something that will eventually replace gasoline pickups?
Yes, well, I want to start actually what happened about a few days ago. This was actually Friday afternoon, and I was coming home, and actually Friday night, and this news drops.
Okay.
That one of the major automotive magazines said that we have heard that Ford is going to call their upcoming electric EV F-150 the Lightning.
Whoa.
And I was like, why Friday night? Why do you have to talk about it Friday?
Andre was in his jammies. He was ready to put on some Simpsons and lay back. And then, of course, he's got to go cover truck news, huh?
Yes, but this was really significant. And they said it was an anonymous source, and Ford hasn't confirmed this officially. But it kind of was a big deal because the Lightning truck, of course, was the performance street truck, right? In the 90s and the early 2000s, there were two generations of the Lightning. Mm-hmm. And was a really high performance, very fast. And now electricity, Lightning electric, right?
It's very clever. Yes, it's very, very clever.
So I guess it kind of makes sense. What do you think about the name?
Well, I think it is an interesting idea, and it may point to something a little bit controversial because if they do call it the Lightning and they do brand it as the ultimate EV pickup truck, which I have a feeling they will, they're going to want to come out of the gates with the best thing they have. I have a feeling that the first Ford F-150 EV is not going to be an affordable commercial work truck. I think it's going to be a high-end $65,000, $70,000 I don't want to say plaything, but basically a vehicle that is targeted at the more luxury consumer, the performance-oriented consumer, someone who's not necessarily a contractor, but someone who maybe manages the contractors, if that makes sense. The person who wants the ultimate pickup truck. Yeah.
Yeah. And also what happened that day or the next morning, Ford officially published this image. And if you're watching us, thank you. By the way, TFL Talk YouTube channel is where you can find our video podcast. And also, of course, you can listen to us. But if you go to tfltruck.com, the Ford, this is not the Lightning truck. They didn't officially call it the Lightning, but they published this dark silhouette of a front end of a truck. And they said, stay tuned, basically.
Now, we have seen images of the F-150 EV testing.
Yes, it's basically a prototype, which was actually kind of the prototype we did see was a crew cab, short bed.
Okay.
So it looks to be kind of standard size. It has unique wheels on the prototype, very, very sleek, very aerodynamic. But also what Ford has said, first of all, they're building a plant near their Rouge factory in Michigan to build the electric vehicles, right? They're actually having a new addition to the factory.
Yes.
And then they said it's going to be their highest performance F-150, and I believe them because electric motors are very powerful.
So when Ford revealed the Mustang Mach-E, which is the four-door all-electric Mustang crossover, they debuted the lesser trim levels first. And what I mean is there's a GT model, which is a super high performance one, that was actually delayed, and it's still delayed relative to the launch of like the basic extended range and the rear wheel drive one, right?
Yeah, and the regular ones are already on sale.
Yeah, so you can buy like the affordable Mach-E right now, which starts in I think the 40s.
40s, yeah.
But if you want the top dog GT, you're going to have to wait a little bit more. Ordering just ordered up at the end of April, and that's going to be the really high performance one that's $60-some thousand. I think that was a mistake because I think in order to get consumers excited about electrification, you got to wow them right off the bat. And I think they should have launched with the GT first and then rolled out the everyman Mustang a little bit later on. I think Ford's going to do the opposite with the F-150.
Really? So that's where you're coming from, basically.
Yeah, so I think they're going to come out of the gate screaming with the most expensive, the fastest, the highest range, the fastest charging, the most extreme F-150 first with the highest price tag. Get people excited, get people talking, and then maybe a year and a half down the road, we'll start to see the rear-wheel drive one, and then maybe the smaller battery one, and more of the attainable model.
That's an interesting thought. I can kind of see that. I mean, the prototype we see here, and we have a special video about this separately on TFL Truck. Yeah, it does look kind of premium. So I see some, that could be very valid because they also have to compete against several others, right?
Yeah.
But none of those are for sale yet. So the Rivian truck is supposed to be coming with 750 horsepower, right, and very fast acceleration. Tesla is promising a lot of power, sub 3-second accelerations. Then there is the Hummer EV truck with 3-second acceleration time. So it makes sense that Ford would make that high performance one, right, available.
And I think on the Rivian, it's the same way, right? Certainly the Hummer. So if you look at the Hummer, which is the craziest,
it's the most expensive one first.
Right. So
Yes.
before we get to the affordable, well, quote unquote affordable Hummers, it's the $100 and some $1,000 ones first.
Yes.
And then they're going to start trickling into the 90s and the 80s. Is that how Rivian's going to work too? Are they going to start with the expensive models before they begin delivering the cheap ones? Do you know?
Well, actually, so they did announce a lot. They announced their pricing models, some options. And right now, basically the model that's starting up is about 72 grand to start, but I think most of them will have options.
Okay.
And the ones that they're starting with has 4 motors, so 1 motor for each wheel basically, but the motors are mounted actually inward, kind of in the center of the vehicle.
Inboard,
right?
yeah.
Inboard, not at the wheel, like some others, but. After a few options, including the kitchen sink, did you know that Rivian is going to offer a kitchen setup in their truck?
I did not know that.
Yeah, a camping kitchen. That's about 90 grand.
Wow, really?
So it's also very expensive.
So, and I think, first of all, if it's anything like the cars, it's very expensive to build and manufacture these electric vehicles. It sounds like, from what we've heard, it's much smaller profit margins relative to the gasoline cars. And that's because batteries are very expensive and they're very heavy. So it does sort of make sense why they're offering the more expensive one first. Maybe there's bigger profits in that as well. And it's got the most capability. So if you're looking for a truck, an electric truck, right, and you're just a consumer and you've been driving gas for the last 30, 40 years, you're going to be more impressed by a range of over 300 and 0 to 16 under 4 seconds and you know the big numbers versus seeing a range of 200 and 0 to 16 9 seconds. And like that's not going to wow you. And I think for a new technology, it has to come out of the gates and wow you.
Yeah, makes sense. So while we're talking about the upcoming news, so there's a few other things happening. I want us to think about the following questions. So this email I referenced earlier came from Spencer Strom. I think I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. He sent kind of several questions here, and we have them also on our website. First question. Let's just keep in mind. What is keeping EV trucks from being viable towing vehicles?
Okay.
Yeah. So we have some insight into this, but obviously you and I are not electrical engineers. Right? So we will have the exact insight into this. Question number two. What are the effects of the lithium-ion battery in the mining process?
Yep.
So actually, what does it actually take to actually produce these vehicles, right? And recycling of batteries. That's the second question. The third question is about the charging network.
Okay.
Basically, because that still needs to be kind of more standardized and actually made easier.
Yes.
And also, what does make gas versus electric? What are the strengths of each?
That's interesting. Okay, yeah.
So the next piece of news actually came out just a couple of hours ago. There's a company called Blue Origin. Have you heard of this?
I have not heard of Blue Origin.
Well, Blue Origin is part of the family of companies that Jeff Bezos, the chairman of Amazon, is invested in and who is leading. Blue Origin is a space exploration company. It's basically a competitor to SpaceX
Right.
in a way, which is Elon Musk's company. And Amazon is, invested into Rivian pretty heavily, a year ago or maybe a little bit more. And there's a video of Jeff Bezos at the test site where they tested their rocket launch, driving a Rivian pickup truck through the desert to go check out the landing site of this rocket and the capsule. Mm-hmm. So we have this story on TFL Truck, and there's Jeff Bezos in Texas wearing a cowboy hat. You could see it right there, enjoying driving this truck, basically. So here it begs the question, who's going to be first to market, right?
Right.
Is the Rivian actually ready for production? They're saying June of 2021, first customer deliveries. I think Jeff is an investor, so I'm sure he has special privileges.
Okay.
He's also the richest person in the world, I think. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think? Who's going to be first to market?
I don't think it's going to be Rivian, actually. So we've seen a lot of their trucks running around. We saw them in that Long Way Up documentary. Yep. With Ewan McGregor and Charlie.
They're testing in the wild.
Yeah, and then of course we saw them at like Rebel Rally. I really am skeptical that they're actually going to be first, because it's one thing to build a design mock-up of a vehicle. It's another thing to build one that runs. It's another thing to build a handful that run. And then it's a whole another can of worms to actually scale into mass production and get those economies of scale up and running. And I really question whether or not Rivian is going to be first in that game. They do have a plant in Normal, Illinois, which is an ex-Mitsubishi plant, I think,
I believe
right?
so, yep.
But I think it's going to take a company like Ford or GM to really be first when it comes to delivering trucks in a big way. Rivian may get a few out the door, but I think in terms of mass deliveries, I have a feeling Ford is going to be first with the F-150 EV. We haven't seen a lot about it, but I just have a hunch that they're going to reveal it. They'll be like, this thing's going to be out in a few months, and then it's going to be out in a few months.
And when they say it's going to be out, it's going to be out.
Well, because Rivian's had a lot of, Ford has had delays with like the Bronco too, but Rivian's had a lot of delays with getting the R1T out, and now they're saying, June of this year?
Yeah, which is coming soon.
But I'm questioning whether or not that is actually going to be the reality.
True, and they're using I think they're approaching it from a kind of a direct sale model, right? So not really opening dealerships, right? So, and also the service, they call it the white glove service.
Whoa.
To basically where you call the company, right, if you have an issue, a technical issue with your truck, and if they cannot fix it remotely, somebody will be sent to you. So it's very similar to Tesla.
How do if I wanted to buy one, where do I buy one?
Well, you order it online.
Oh, I get that, but I drive a car in the real world. Wait, it just like shows up? What, it just like I open the garage and there it is? I mean, are there going to be stores like Polestar is doing or Tesla's doing? I mean, I haven't heard of any Rivian stores in our area.
That's one of the issues, I think. I think you're thinking of about who's going to be first to market, right?
Right.
But I am actually optimistic that they will start delivering actually to normal, customers, not billionaires like Jeff Bezos. I'm actually confident because they've shown, they have a lot of employees, when they actually came out 2.5 years ago as a company, they had like 600 employees.
Yeah, and they've poached a lot of employees too from other major
companies. From other major manufacturers. And so they have a lot of knowledge, expertise, and they have money from Amazon, from Ford investing into them also. So I'm very confident. I think they might be first. How many they will sell is another story.
It's funny, too. We go on these press events, and sometimes we get to speak to engineers, and we know a bunch of them in the industry. And we'll be like, so how's so-and-so? And then the engineer will be like, oh, that person's at Rivian. And it's happened like 4 or 5 times in the last couple months talking to the major OEMs because they do have a ton of money behind them. I mean, they're floating in it. They could...
Yeah, and the other thing is, like Tesla recently announced their most recent earnings, right?
Yeah.
And it was successful, 2 things, right? They said they made money, but the actual money they made was based on credits, right? Electric vehicle credits that they were actually selling to other companies, not pure profit from selling vehicles.
Right.
That's approximation, This is not a financial show.
Yeah.
But an approximation of what happened was they were making money but not directly by selling. And they've been around for 12 years, right?
It's crazy.
So this is that hard to actually have a profitable, successful automotive company.
Absolutely. No, for sure. So let's take a break from the news and start answering some of those questions about whether or not EVs will work. And the first question is about towing.
Right. Is it going to be viable?
So this is an interesting question, and we have had a little bit of experience with this. So a while back, we bought a long-term Tesla Model X.
Correct.
We paid $86,000 for it. It was the standard Model X. It wasn't a performance with a 100 kilowatt hour battery. That's how you measure battery capacity. And 100 kilowatt hours is a really big battery. I mean, that's about as big as you can currently buy in the industry right now. To put it in perspective, like the first lease were around 24 kilowatt hours. So 100 is a really big pack. Now, the Model X that we had was rated at right about 300 miles on a single charge. But what we found is when we hooked up a trailer, and we tried it a few times, the range decreased significantly from like 300 miles to
about 100.
And in some cases less than 100, depending on what you're towing. And these aren't huge trailers. I mean, when me and you did it, we were towing 5,000 pounds.
And that was a kind of a box trailer meant for horses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when my dad and I did it, we were towing, I think, 1,500 pounds.
I think that was a Boreas trailer.
Right.
And that weighed about 2,000 pounds.
Okay.
And it's very low profile.
But it still had major range problems. And so what we found what would happen is you would drive for an hour and then you'd have to charge for an hour. And you'd drive for an hour and you'd have to charge for an hour. And that's how it was towing. Now, the reason behind this is, I mean, you can get into the science in it, but it's basically the energy density that a battery pack offers versus like a tank of gasoline. So if you really dive into it and you look at the raw energy in that 100 kilowatt hour pack, it's equivalent to something like a few gallons of gasoline.
Like 3 or 4 gallons.
Yeah, so think about that. The entire battery in a Tesla is equal to 3 or 4 gallons. Now, the reason it can go 300 miles empty is because it's super efficient. Electric cars are really efficient. They're not wasting...
The motors are very efficient.
Yeah, they're really efficient. Compared to gasoline engines, which waste huge amounts of energy and heat, electric motors are very, very, very efficient. But the issue is when you start towing, when you put big, square, blocky trailers behind them, or even not big, square, blocky trailers, the efficiency that you get from...
falls off dramatically.
Yeah, it just like falls off a cliff.
Yeah, and I think, and I've spoken to a couple engineers about this too. This is, kind of not official conversations, but like you said, at some events, right? And basically what it boils down to is you're putting a consistent draw on those motors and batteries, right? Because you're asking the machine to tow a heavy load, for example, up a mountain or down a highway or whatever it may be. And you're generating heat once again. Right. The motors are heating up, the batteries are heating up, all of the subsystems are heating up, and there comes a point where the whole system becomes less efficient, basically, because you're continuously asking it for more and more power. I think what's electric cars are best at are actually stop and go traffic.
Yeah, and
you accelerate, you brake, you recoup some energy,
right,
and you can accelerate again, right?
And we saw that too. Like if you look at normal hybrids, like the Prius, I know we're talking about the Prius on the truck show.
Oh.
I know. But normal hybrids, and this may be the case with your F-150 too, typically do better fuel economy in the city than on the highway.
Yeah.
They do better at stop and go than sustain loads. And that's just amplified when you put a trailer behind them. Now, to solve that, battery density is going to have to increase a lot.
Yes.
So like our Model X had a 100 kilowatt hour pack, but the thing was at 5,500 pounds or some ridiculous
already
number.
So battery density. So first of all, you need to have more energy storage, but you cannot do it at the expense of weight, right?
That's the problem.
Because you can double the battery size.
Yes.
And once again, you're adding a lot of weight to the vehicle, which is no good.
And it's an interesting thing. So if you look at the Hummer that you just saw, that has a 200 kilowatt hour pack.
Basically, yes.
And that's kind of I don't want to say ham-fisted, but it's kind of a blunt approach to getting a lot of range in a heavy vehicle. Because the issue is you've got a big vehicle, so you want a lot of batteries, but when you add more batteries, it gets heavier, and then that huge vehicle becomes even heavier. So
and
you need
less
more.
Efficient.
So you need more batteries, and then you're making it less efficient. It's a tough thing right now with the current tech. Ideally, you'd have a small pack with a lot of capacity, but with the current science behind it, it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, and speaking of the Hummer, so EV truck is supposed to be on sale at the end of this year.
Wow.
Right, so that's what GM said.
Okay.
GM is obviously a major manufacturer that's been around for 100 years and more. So yes, when they say that, I'm assuming they will deliver at least some number of trucks this year because they're promising this. And that truck has about 350 miles of range. Okay, so usable range, but like you said, it takes them about 200 kilowatt hours, double the Tesla's capacity.
And think about this, like the Tesla Model X, which is also an SUV, albeit not an off-road one, will do 300 miles with half the capacity.
Yeah, so it's diminishing
returns. Yeah, the more batteries you put in, the less return you get on them.
Yeah, because it gets heavier. So it's not clear. And actually, Hummer and GMC did not announce, first of all, towing numbers. They did not announce how much their trucks weigh.
Okay.
They did announce that they're going to be very fast and very powerful. So yeah, that's a good question. So that leads into the second question, right? Actually, let's skip ahead to the third question, which was charger networks, right?
Right.
So if you cannot go very far, you have to be able to charge quickly and also
frequently,
easily.
Yeah, and frequently if you need to.
Yeah.
So this is also an interesting conversation.
So who do you think has the best charging network now?
So Tesla has a very built-out network. It's called the superchargers, and you may have seen them at like your local mall or along sides of major interstates, and they're these little stalls with these plugs on them.
Sure.
And basically you drive along, and actually the Tesla's really smart. It knows where on your trip you need to plug in and for how long, and it will actually optimize the charging to ensure, and your road trip to ensure that you are spending the least amount of time charging. So, for example, here in Colorado, if I plug in Los Angeles, it'll tell me to drive west for maybe 100 miles, and then it'll tell me to charge for 10 minutes. And then I'll go for another 200 miles and charge for another 15, 20 minutes.
So it kind of is coaching you to how make your best trip possible.
Yes, and when you're road tripping in a Tesla, it's all very seamless. It tells you when to stop. You plug it in, wait 15 minutes, unplug it, and off you go. And it's not really a big deal, actually. I mean, you drive for a couple hours, you charge for 20, 30 minutes, go to the bathroom, get a coffee, whatever, and then keep going. Some people, that's a big deal. But I think for most, it's probably not all that insane. Of course, if you want to go off the beaten path, if you don't want to stick to the major interstates, the Tesla supercharger network does fall apart a little bit. But for the most part, you can get almost everywhere in the country.
Well, they have a system or a station in Moab, which is not on a major highway, right?
Yep, that's true.
So they are increasing the number of stations. There's also other networks, America.
Electrify America.
Thank you.
So here's the crazy thing, though.
Yes.
If you have a Hummer, if you have a Ford, if you have a Rivian, you can't charge at the Tesla chargers.
Correct. It's for Tesla owners only.
So it's the best network, but you can't use them because Tesla locks it out just for Teslas. Now, a while back, there was this whole thing like Elon Musk I'll let anybody use my chargers. That hasn't played out. And I mean, from a business standpoint, why should he? It's a huge competitive advantage.
Correct. And good for them. But also, like you said, there's really great integration between the vehicle and the network.
Right.
Right. Like you said, there's a lot of software. The software is helping you inside the vehicle. It's coaching you. And then the charging process you can monitor on your phone, right? You can do all those things. But obviously companies like Ford and VW and others are attempting to kind of, at least match that, right?
Now, from my experience, when I'm using the Ford or the Volkswagen system and I plug in it like my destination, it's a lot less intuitive. And there may be different brands of chargers I have to use. For example, like ChargePoint, Electrify America, EVgo, and those typically require memberships. Oftentimes, like EVgo requires a specific membership, same with ChargePoint. And the other thing, too, is sometimes they're just totally wrong. Like I was in a Volkswagen and it routed me to this charger that would have taken 9 hours to fill up. Right, versus the one a little bit down the street, which would have been 25 minutes.
And when I'm driving in my normal truck, right, my gas-powered or diesel-powered truck, I don't have to have a membership to go to like a Shell station.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah, it's a mess.
So it's not quite there yet.
Right, and now
they're improving it.
It's changing a little bit. Like Ford now has something called plug and charge. So if you're on an Electrify America network, you can just plug it in and off you go. It didn't work for me, but apparently it's working for some folks. And then now Electrify America also has normal credit card readers.
Swipers.
Although you do pay more than if you had a membership.
Okay.
So the charging thing is an issue on road trips. But if you have a house and a garage, it's not an issue. So what I mean by that is if you have a place to plug it in every night, you can basically wake up in the morning with the full quote-unquote tank. Right, and that's what we do with our Tesla. So we oftentimes drive in the city and even to neighboring towns, and we can drive 150, 200 miles, come home, plug it in overnight, wake up in the morning, and we've got another full tank to keep going.
True, but it's not quite as simple as that because you did have to plug into your 240 volt circuit at home, right?
We had to pay an electrician. I think it was $500 to install a 240 volt circuit. That's true.
In the garage and the wiring and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Which is it's an investment, right? Okay,
right.
In your house and in your a vehicle and your garage, that's okay. But also, so then of course there's a price of electricity, which is pretty affordable these days.
Yeah, compared to gasoline, it'll be like pennies on the dollar.
Sure.
At least currently, yeah.
But like for me, so I haven't done that yet. So my wife drives right now Bmw I3,
which is like a little baby electric car.
Yeah, baby electric car. And I don't have a fast charger or level 2 charger in my garage. It's just a standard 110, right, volt circuit. And for her, it's okay because her battery is about 17 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, so compare that to the 100 in the Tesla.
Or 200 in the Hummer.
And it'll only go...
What would happen if I drive my Hummer into my garage, if it will fit?
Will it fit in your garage?
And if I start charging, it will take like 2 days to charge.
So, Andre's wife, how long is her commute, do you think?
A round trip is 50 miles.
Does she ever use any... does she ever run out? Is there ever concern?
No.
So that car will only go about 60, 70 miles on a single charge.
Yeah. But for her, it's fine.
But so when you park it at home and you just plug it in off a standard 110 volt outlet, like a little 3-prong wall outlet, will it be fully charged in the morning?
Yes.
Okay.
But because she has a small battery.
Yes, that's true. Now, if you had a big battery like in the Hummer, you would really need to get the 240 volt system installed.
Absolutely.
It's worth the $500, $1,000 fee to get that little outlet installed. And the outlet we're talking about is it kind of looks like the outlet that you'd use on like a dryer or an oven.
Yeah.
It's
totally.
like one of like the bigger
3-prong, like what is it, 30 amp?
Yeah, and if you have an oven in your garage, just unplug the oven and
I don't have an oven in my garage. or a refrigerator. I mean, I have a small refrigerator in my garage.
What about a dryer? Do you have a dryer in your garage?
No, it's next door.
You can't
it's behind the wall. And you know what else? Houses have firewalls. So the wall between the garage and the home is actually a very, very thick wall.
Oh, interesting.
And a lot of it, like we tried to put like a speaker system in the garage, and you're not allowed, at least by code in Colorado, to drill through that wall because it's basically a fire barrier between the garage and the home.
So when we had our 240 volt installed, our breaker box is on the outside of our garage. So we basically just drilled.
That was easier.
Yeah, we just drilled through the garage and then ran some conduit
from the outside.
Up. Yeah, ran some conduit up. So that is an interesting point. But honestly, if your commute is like for these upcoming trucks that have a 300-mile range, if your commute is even under 150 miles, just plug in at home and charge it up, and you'll save a lot of money compared to your gasoline vehicle. And if you have solar like Andre does, you'll pay nothing in electricity, and it's a really great win-win. It's just the road tripping thing which is going to be a problem.
Yeah, and towing
and road tripping. That's the other thing too is. Most of the current flock of fast chargers, they're called DC chargers, are not set up for towing. They're like little pull-in things, and if you had a trailer, you'd be sticking out and blocking.
Or you have to remove your trailer and do
it's a mess.
all this.
Yeah. So like the Tesla ones, you have to back end, which is for the most part, which is a really big problem.
Yeah, and on the BMW I3, the charge port is in the back.
Yeah.
So I had to do an extension cord because I can't quite reach, to the front of the garage.
I know, it's a mess.
So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. But so the charging is currently, I think, one of the biggest issues. And then there's the time to charge. So Andre mentioned on 110 volt, if your battery is completely depleted, it can take a few days.
For a big vehicle.
Yeah, if you have a 240 volt, it'll probably take 6 to 8 hours, maybe 10 hours from empty to full. And then if you're at a fast charger, it'll take 0 to 80% in somewhere around 45 minutes, 50 minutes, depending on the car. And then above 80%, it slows down a lot. But typically on a road trip, you only go from,
10% to 80%.
80% at the most, yeah. So those speeds are still definitely longer than gasoline or diesel, which will take you 3 minutes. So something to keep in mind on road trips. But those speeds are getting quicker and quicker and quicker at a monumental rate. as battery tech improves and as chargers improve. And currently, I think the chargers are faster than the cars. So we rate charging speeds in kilowatts. So Andre's i3 can only charge at, I think, 7 kilowatts?
Yeah, approximately.
Or something. Yeah. The older ones could charge at 50 kilowatts, the older cars that could do fast charging.
But now what Teslas can do, 150 or 250?
250, yeah. The Porsche's 270.
Yeah.
The Taycan. And some of the chargers are rated up to 350 now. A lot of the Electrify Americas are rated up to 350. So there's some room to grow there once vehicles get more and more better at charging.
And I think there's a stepping stone here. And I purchased an F-150 hybrid because of this issue. I didn't have level 2 charging at home. No electric truck was available, right?
Right.
Because they're not around yet. So I think this hybrid truck, and I'm still kind of learning about it, and as the weeks go by, and I'm pretty happy with it. And it's a good solution, right? I have power, pretty good efficiency, right? And I'm still using a lot of gas, right? Because it's a hybrid.
Right.
But it was kind of a stepping stone, right? It's just kind of a connection to it.
So there's no plug on your hybrid though, right? Like there's nothing you need to charge up.
Correct.
So Andre has a little battery, it's like 1.5 kilowatt hours, and then the big gas V6. And then basically how it works is at really slow speeds, you're running on electricity.
Yeah, or also at coasting speeds.
Coasting speeds, yeah. Coming down a mountain.
Coming down the mountain or whatever, maintaining 55 miles an hour, it can do on electricity.
Now that's different from like the e-torque in the Ram, which is basically just a starter motor that allows start-stop at stoplights. So this is a step above e-torque. Then above Andre's you have like the plug-in hybrid. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yeah, the plug-in hybrid is a bigger battery. For example, the Jeep 4xe, the Wrangler that's just out, and they're rumored to put it also into the Gladiator and some other vehicles. It's basically a bigger battery and then a plug. So you do have to charge it, but you have a longer range that you can drive on electricity alone. I think the Jeep is about 19 to 21 miles?
I think it's 21.
21 miles on electricity alone. So you have that.
But then, here's the key to the plug-in hybrid.
Yes.
You don't have to plug it in if you don't want to, because once the battery dies, it still works as like a normal car or truck. It still works like a normal hybrid like Andre's pickup.
Right.
So it's kind of an optional thing. If you have a short commute, plug it in at home, drive your 20 miles, and then plug it in at home again, and you'll never use gasoline. If you have a long commute, plug it in, drive 21 miles, use gasoline for the rest of the trip.
But then, of course, you have some complexity, right? Because you have the gasoline engine and an electric motor and batteries and all of the wiring and systems to connect it together. So complexity grows, right, with the hybrid.
And then the other issue with the plug-in hybrid is it's a hard thing because it's not a very good electric car because you're lugging around the gasoline engine when it's not running. And it's not a very good gasoline car because you're lugging around a giant battery when the battery's depleted.
Yes.
So it's a very niche
It's almost
kind of thing.
the best and the worst of both worlds.
I would say if you have a commute of like 5 miles, 10 miles,
it's cool.
And your plug-in hybrid goes 20 miles, like get it. It makes sense. You'll never use gasoline. And then on your weekends when you go on trips, it's a gasoline car. We haven't seen any plug-in hybrid trucks yet, though, have we?
No.
I wonder why not.
And I don't know. So maybe weight and complexity is part of it, right?
I think that is kind of the ultimate stepping stone. I think that's
the plug-in.
First of all, people don't understand the plug-in hybrid thing. It's really baffling to a lot of folks, which is interesting to me. And I've seen this on our YouTube comments. I've seen this on our TikTok comments. But like I was on the Jeep trip and I was like, it'll do 21 miles on a single charge, and then it's got gasoline. And people were like, oh, it'll only do 21 miles and then it's empty. I'm like,
but then you have the gas.
You have 300 miles of gasoline engine then. And I just don't think people understand that. Because like your truck, your normal hybrid, you drive it like a gasoline truck, right?
Yeah, totally. And dude, I have like 650 miles of range.
Right.
I can go from here to Albuquerque and back. Well, not quite back.
But if you never wanted to, you don't pay attention to the electric system. It's just kind of operating in the background.
Right.
It does its thing.
Totally seamless.
Yeah.
Completely in the background.
Whereas a plug-in hybrid, you still have to interact with it.
A little bit, because you may want to charge it.
Yeah, and I think the average consumer really understands gasoline. They kind of understand electricity, but the combination of them is a little bit mind-blowing.
Yeah, and then when you have a truck, the Jeep weighs about 500 pounds more.
Very heavy,
plug-in.
Really heavy.
So if your truck weighed 500 pounds more than what it does now, you would be losing payload at the same time. And payload is very huge for trucks because they're usually work vehicles or maybe they're recreational vehicles that are towing heavy. So Yeah.
So in my opinion, I think you're best off getting either a standard hybrid like the F-150 hybrid or the rumored Tundra.
Hybrid.
That's supposed to be hybrid too.
Yeah.
That's what we've heard rumor mill wise.
Yeah.
Or going full electricity. I think the plug-in hybrid thing confuses people. I don't think there's a huge benefit because
At least for trucks.
yeah, at least for trucks. Yeah.
For cars or small vehicles, it might make sense.
Well,
look at the RAV4 Prime.
yeah, the RAV4 Prime is good.
It's a plug-in hybrid. It's high performance.
Yep.
I mean, it's pretty powerful, and it's efficient.
Now the other option too, while we're on this potential exciting tangent, is something called the Rex, which is the range extender.
Yes, which is a concept that actually many companies, including Ford, have patents about
Interesting.
for trucks.
Now, on the market, there's only
Yes.
ever been one in the US, as far as I know, and it's Andre's little BMW i3.
It has a little motorcycle engine.
Like, it's literally a two-cylinder motor. It's 650 cc's.
Yeah.
It makes 34 horsepower. But the idea is it's an electric car, right? You drive it like an electric car. You have to fill it up with electricity. But in the ultimate worst case situation where you can't make it home or you can't make it to the charger, a little itty bitty engine fires up as a generator.
Yes.
And that powers the
Yeah.
battery. I mean, really a little itty bitty.
Yeah, totally. And actually, in the BMW, it's well integrated. It sounds awful, right? It's like, why would this little motorcycle engine start to make noise and ruin my trip? It's actually almost seamless. It only kicks on, according to what I've seen, when you're kind of moving.
Okay.
Because when you're moving, there's some road noise going on. There is some wind noise.
It does sound like a golf cart.
And it kind of, but it sounds kind of like road noise.
Right.
It's hard to notice.
And it doesn't change RPM either. I mean,
No, it's constant RPM,
It's got
right.
like a and then a depending on how fast you're going. But it's like a generator. It just maintains
It
an
just
RPM.
sits there and makes electricity.
Now, so it's different from a plug-in hybrid, though, because on a plug-in hybrid, it's got a big gasoline engine, which means you can drive it around every day on gasoline if you
Right.
never wanted to plug it in. You can't drive around an i3 on gasoline. A, it doesn't go very far. It's
Or very fast.
40 miles. Or very fast, because it's got 34 horsepower.
Right, because that engine is not connected to the wheels.
Yeah, it's
That
just a
little
generator.
generator is actually putting electricity into the battery.
Right.
And then the battery electricity goes to the wheels.
Where that could come in handy, though, is so on the i3 in Europe, and then we turned Andres into this too, you can actually, it's called coding, where as you drive along, it constantly adds electricity back to the battery of the little motor while you're at like highway speeds.
So you can maintain a charge, basically.
Sort of maintain it.
Yes.
I mean, if you're doing 75 up a hill,
Right.
yeah, you're still going to see that electricity dip down because that little engine can't keep up. But it's going to dip down slower. And the benefit of having just a tiny engine, super lightweight. And I could really see this in a towing application. Like if you had a little diesel generator, click it on when the battery's at 100%, drive along, and that battery's going to last a lot longer because it's being fed electricity from this generator. Maybe
Yeah.
not enough to maintain 75 up a hill with 40,000 pounds behind you, but enough to get you to the charger.
So maybe that's the ultimate helper for towing in electric trucks.
Maybe it is.
Just having a little gasoline or diesel generator that kind of helps you with that energy need when you don't have the energy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So maybe that's it.
So what's the next question?
Well, the next question is there's a question about recycling and the battery impact.
Great question.
How do you manufacture the batteries? What's the impact on recycling? This is a little bit above my pay grade.
It's above mine too, Andre.
Lithium-ion technology is prevalent right now. A lot of companies that recently, for example, BMW, Ford, Toyota, have invested into solid-state battery technology, which is kind of the next stage, different chemistry. Ultium batteries from GM are slightly different chemistry too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tesla is talking about different chemistries. VW is talking about different chemistries. All of them also talk about recyclability, right?
Right.
Because eventually these batteries will go bad.
Right.
All batteries go bad eventually. So how do you reuse that, and put it back to work, basically?
And then the other side of it is the mining of the raw materials to
Right.
make the batteries.
Because a lot of them are rare metals,
Yes.
basically.
And there's a lot of research on the line about this. As far as I understand from the stuff I've read, it is very hard on the environment mining these precious materials. and can be more costly than the production of a typical or an equivalent gasoline vehicle. But I have read that the environmental impact of that is offset after a few years of driving that EV. Because it is so much more efficient. The other thing too, which there's a lot of research into, is even if your local power comes exclusively from coal, your vehicle is still better off for the environment running even off that coal power plant than a typical gasoline truck or gasoline car.
In Colorado, we have a lot of coal electricity.
Yeah, but you still see a benefit to the pollution made even if by driving EVs, and it's an efficiency thing. It's a whole conversation.
It's a big conversation. It's a very complicated topic.
Yeah, but there are some other benefits, and that is one of the questions, right? What are the benefits
of EV versus gas?
Yeah.
So I think we hit on a lot of these. I think the benefits of gas and diesel over electric is the energy density of the gasoline.
Right.
The gasoline and diesel energy density is incredible, even though the engine is not super efficient technically of converting energy to motion. It doesn't matter because there's so much density in that fuel that you can go hundreds of miles before refilling. And refilling is easy.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the benefits.
And fast.
I mean,
it takes a few minutes to fill up your car.
Yeah, exactly. The benefits of electricity is, well, first of all, you don't have emissions, right? You're not spewing gases.
Tailpipe emissions.
Tailpipe emissions. Also, efficiency of the electric motor is far superior. And power. There's a reason why a heavy Hummer truck can accelerate in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
It's because those electric motors are very, very powerful and very fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's instant torque, too, so you don't have to wait for power to build up.
Right, exactly.
The other thing, too, which is a big benefit for people, you can fill it up at home, right? You don't have to go to a gas station once a week, once every 2 weeks. You can fill it up at home, and if you don't have a road trip every week, that's a very doable thing. Maintenance.
Very low maintenance.
Very low maintenance.
So here's what Ford says, and I know this is kind of Ford heavy, but Ford has had a lot of news recently in this space. They just announced pricing on the E-Transit all-electric commercial van. The starting price is about $43,295, and this price sounds reasonable, okay?
Okay.
But this $43,295 is for a chassis cab, which is basically actually a cutaway, which means you're getting the front of the van, but then you can put your own like shuttle body or something behind it.
Yep.
Right, for an upfitter. It's about $12,000 more than a comparable Transit gas-powered van.
Ooh.
$12,000.
That's a lot.
But here's what Ford says on maintenance. They say after 8 years or 100,000 miles of using an electric van, Transit, you will have about 40% less maintenance costs.
Wow.
So that's a big savings in maintenance.
It is a big
already.
savings, yeah.
Then savings in fuel costs, right, is another step, right?
Yep.
So overall, it will make sense over a longer period of time to own an electric van. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
That's an interesting point, too. So there's no oil to change, right? You don't have to do oil changes.
Nope.
No spark plugs to change.
No.
There's no timing belts or timing chains to go wrong.
Right. Also, brakes.
Brakes?
Electric vehicles are very easy on brakes.
Yeah,
they still have brakes.
You regen. So when you regen an electric vehicle, what that means is you let off the throttle pedal, and basically it coasts the electric motor and drags the electric motor as you slow down to put electricity back into the battery.
Yeah.
But that force is so great that you slow down.
Right.
And you can actually...
and you're not using your brakes.
Yeah, and like a Tesla, you can slow down from 70 to stop quickly without touching a single brake pad to a disc.
Yeah, and your brake lights come on. So they've taken care of this.
Yeah.
Right. But your brakes last longer.
Yeah. There's also for the most part, there's no transmission. Right.
Usually 1 speed or 2 speed. Or
maybe
something.
1 or 2 speeds.
Yeah.
So you save on potentially clutches or big transmission jobs. I mean, motors for the most part, the electric motors we've seen last a really, really long time.
Unless you beat on them like Tesla drag racers or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes they can fail prematurely. Now, the one big point too, which we should talk about, is longevity of the battery. That we thought would be a huge deal when EVs first were released. And it was a big problem with things like the early Nissan Leafs because they had air-cooled batteries, and range degradation. So after a few years, your car couldn't go 80 miles. It could go 60 miles and 50 and then 40. Other than the Leaf, though, especially within like the Tesla stuff, we see very, very little range degradation. Even over hundreds of thousands of miles, it may be 5-10%. Which is really minimal. And the i3 you have, the 2014 i3, you haven't seen much degradation either.
Well, but some, right? There's like a weird thing you can like a secret menu,
back entrance
in the car that can kind of tell you how much battery capacity you may have lost. But I think over 7 years, did you actually do that calculation?
It was like
10%.
Not even. It was like 1 or 2 kilowatt hours. So yeah, maybe 10%.
So 10% after 7 years. So yes, there is degradation. Eventually batteries will go bad. And I think that also leads into resale value.
Yes.
So some electric vehicles have great resale value, like Teslas.
Hang on. Only Tesla electric vehicles have good resale value.
Let me rephrase that. Tesla vehicles have really good resale value. Other electric vehicles do not currently. For example, that's why I was happy to buy that i3. It's because it was $12,000.
Exactly.
And it was affordable because it's losing its value partially because the battery is degrading and the vehicle becomes cheaper.
Now, I really don't think. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I don't think that the degradation is as big as a lot of folks make it seem to be. There's a lot of anti-EV people that say, "Oh, your battery's gonna have 50% in a couple of years." From my experience, I've never seen that. Unless it's, like I said, an early Nissan Leaf that's been constantly fast charged, because fast charging can have a negative effect on the battery. And now, like, new vehicles too have a like preservation setting in the battery. So if you don't charge them up to 100%, people have found that they last a lot longer, right? If you don't take them all the way to 0 and then all the way up to 100,
right.
If you go from 20% to 80%, they last a lot longer. And
temperature management, right?
Temperature management has also greatly improved.
Yeah.
And just the construction of the batteries as well. So like if you're into old RC cars, like nickel metal hydride, NiCad stuff, that had a memory. Remember, like if you kept charging it too high and didn't run it low, it would develop a memory and kind of be ruined. Lithium ion typically doesn't have that issue. So it is a concern, and we will have to wait and see how it plays out.
Plus, the technology is evolving still.
Yes, it's still changing, and that is a concern for some folks that it's changing too fast. And then you've got the cost, and you mentioned it on the Transit.
Big cost.
It is still very expensive.
Yeah, and we mentioned the price on the Rivian, $90,000 approximately with options. The Hummer EV truck, $112,000. The Ford F-150 may be also expensive. By the way, Chevy has announced their electric Silverado, right?
Yep.
We don't know about how much it will cost, but they said about 400 plus miles of range.
So can you go through the numbers on the Transit, like range and then say the price again and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so just really quickly, and I think Ford went not as big on range on the Transit electric because of cost.
Okay.
They wanted to keep the cost down, so they gave it a 67 kilowatt hour battery.
All right.
Which is not very huge.
No, not huge for the size.
It's like a Chevy Bolt almost.
Yep.
It's almost the same battery as a kind of a smaller car, but what it allows it to do is to go about 126 miles for a smaller van configuration of total range, 126. That sounds like low. But a regular working van in a day, they said they studied about 30 million miles of usage. They said an average working day for a van is about 74 miles.
Okay.
Delivering packages, delivering things, maybe making house calls for a plumber or something like that. So the range is enough for most cases. And price, like I said, starts at $43,000, goes to about $52,000 for an electric van. Also have power export, so you could charge other tools or batteries, right? Mm-hmm. About 2.4 kilowatt generator capability.
That's pretty cool.
Like the F-150 hybrid also has similar capability.
Yeah.
So those are some of the numbers. So it looks like they kept the battery smaller, made it a little bit more affordable, not as big range. But still decent power. About, what did they say? About 250 horsepower, I want to say.
Okay.
So it's not huge power, but it's enough to actually carry large payloads and actually accelerate. So those are the numbers on this van.
Well, so I mean, here's the question, right? It's some $12,000 more expensive
Than a gasoline.
than the equivalent gasoline one. Does it haul more than the gasoline one? Do you know?
No, a little bit less.
So it hauls less.
Yes.
It
So
goes
it's more expensive.
a lot more expensive.
Yeah, a lot more expensive. Hauls a little bit less.
Okay.
Because of the battery weight.
Yep.
But then.
And it only goes 120 some miles according to Ford on a single charge.
Correct. So I think those are the negatives.
Okay.
The positives are, once again, you could charge it to your depot or at home, right?
Right.
You're getting power export. So
Okay.
if you're a construction worker, you can use your van right there as a generator. And then lower maintenance costs, like we talked about, better efficiency.
I mean, it's an interesting question. As a business owner looking for a van, right? It's gonna be, in my mind, a hard sell in some ways, because the standard transit, like I just plugged it into fueleconomy.gov, right? The rear wheel drive one will go 395 miles on a single charge. It's got, I think, an EcoBoost. Is that right?
Or both 2 engine options.
Okay.
Or EcoBoost or a standard V6.
So you can get a standard V6.
Yeah, and that's the price difference. Yes.
And then the standard V6 will have probably similar power to the electric
250,
one.
270 or whatever. Yeah.
So you'd have to really look at your numbers and say, am I going to see the maintenance and fuel savings over the life of this van and the life of my ownership, right? I mean, because it's going to come down to running costs.
Yeah.
Then you have to look at your drivers. Are my drivers driving more than 100 miles every day? What
Correct.
kind of van is it? Is it a shuttle van?
Do I have access to electricity?
Do I have access to electricity to keep it charged?
Yeah.
And then you got to look at fuel prices. Like, are fuel prices high or fuel prices low? That's going to be a big consideration too. Potentially, this is probably a small concern. But what if there's like a power outage, right? In like your city. Although if there's a power outage, you probably can't fill up anyways. But
yeah, but you will be able to have a few hours of power in your van.
that's true. I mean, I think it's a hard sell.
So I don't think this is for every business, right?
Right.
So if you have a small, plumber business or a small, bread delivery business, and you're looking to spend $12,000 more for a van, you probably would say no. Right?
Okay.
But if you have a large fleet, hundreds of vans,
Yep.
and some vans have to go into a particular city center where maybe regulations require it to be quiet or electric,
Yep.
you will have to do this, and then you have to make sure that the cost makes sense,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so it could be related to regulations in certain cities, use cases. They're also saying there's several other like kind of fringe use cases,
Right.
like working in a sound levels where somewhere where you cannot have a loud diesel engine.
Yep.
Or something like that. So yeah, it depends.
And it's also interesting that study where they found that most vans do 70 something miles.
74 miles a day.
That's a hard thing for me to grasp, because Chevrolet tried this when they released the Volt. Do you remember the
Yes.
plug-in hybrid that did
Yeah.
40 miles? And they did all this research, and there was this big ad campaign. The average driver only drives 34 miles, and it does 40 miles on a single charge. You'll never need to buy gas. And that was probably true, but I don't think consumers saw that as the case. They said, oh, it'll only do 40 miles.
Right.
And we see that too. So like when you look at the first crop of EVs, like the compliance cars, like the Fiat 500e, the Focus EV, right? The Smart Electric. We had a Smart Electric.
The Golf EV or whatever.
Yeah. Those would only do like 60 to 70 miles.
Yeah.
People made fun of them. We've owned a bunch of them, and it's true. Like 60 to 70 miles for pretty much the whole team is more than enough for our commute.
Yes.
And it's more than enough to have even like a comfortable buffer. And then you plug it in at night, spend $3 to charge it up, and you're good for another 70 miles. And like your wife found on the i3.
It's enough
right?
for her.
But
Yes.
it's that mental thing, right? You hear 60 miles, you're like, oh, it only goes 60 miles. And I feel that with a Transit too. It'll only do 120 miles. That's more than enough, but it's like that mental block.
Yeah, but I think this is a little bit different because first of all, the initial sales are going to be fleets and big commercial accounts.
Hopefully they listen to the Excel sheet.
And they're going to be listening not to their brain, but the Excel spreadsheets and the cost and all this stuff, right? So they're going to be looking at this as a business, not necessarily as, am I going to make it home?
Yeah, I hope you're right. Yeah, I think it's a cool thing. And so let's go back to our original question. Do you think that the electric pickup truck will work?
Oh boy. Well, according to our towing experiences. I don't think it's super ready for prime time as a truck.
Okay. And we have to test them, right?
We have to.
We'll have to see it for ourselves. Yeah.
Yes, we haven't driven a Rivian or a Tesla or a Hummer, none of those. So first, and this is me just looking at the numbers, right? If you want the truck purely as a truck, right now it's a kind of a hard sell.
As like a tool for towing and for
for work. But if you're buying it for a family, maybe going to the lake on the weekend, not going very far, those use cases will work. And I think that's where kind of your point came in. Make it the most fastest, the coolest, the most expensive, highest option, so you can wow the customer first, and then as the technology kind of approaches that limit, that level, then more people can use it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for currently with the current technology, and once again, we'll put all the trucks to the usual test, but from my experience with EVs and Teslas and all that, it's going to make a lot of sense for like the Raptor or T-Rex buyer who has a budget of $70,000, $80,000, right? And wants the ultimate in 0 to 60, wants the craziest flash and the coolest tech.
Features, yeah.
I'm not sure the person buying an XLT F-150 or, like an RST, more basic Silverado or
Ram,
Workman Ram.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that person is going to be ready to spend the additional money and not see the real benefit.
Yeah, I agree.
But we'll have to wait and see how the trucks do in the real world and how they tow and how they go off-road and what they're like.
And we need to learn about what the F-150 EV will actually have.
Yes.
We don't know yet.
Very true.
And what the electric Silverado will have. And Ram hasn't really said anything about electric Rams.
Ram's busy putting 6.4 liters in the Wranglers right now, Andre.
Okay, well, there you have it, guys. Well, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I hope this was kind of insightful and enjoyable conversation. I know it's a little bit controversial. There's strong feelings here.
Both ways, for sure.
Yeah. So thank you, and as always, go back to tfltruck.com. We'll have all the information on all the latest trucks right there.
Yeah, for sure. See you next time.
Thanks.